So why Jesus? Why the gospel? Why this story that seems beyond belief, and yet the story that has endured for 2 millennia? Well, if like me you have a sense that there is something spiritual to life, that there's more to what we see than just what can be captured in a test tube or weighed on a balance, then you start looking for answers. Now, when I reached that stage in my life some 30 years ago, I tried various things. I dabbled, albeit unwillingly, in Spiritism because we were being haunted at the time. Now, that's a fairly good indicator that there is more to life than meets the eye. It's not something they taught you about in school. Well, Spiritism was a bad idea. But of course I didn't know that at the time. I had no Christian background, no Bible teaching whatsoever in my life. I was raised to be what they call a free thinker. But unlike what a lot of atheist parents regard as free thinking, which is not free at all, it's just, son, you're going to be an atheist just like me. No, my mother was much more open-minded. She was New Age before the term New Age had actually been invented. So she raised me to question everything. So decades later, when I started asking the big questions, I like to think I was fairly open-minded. So with much reluctance, I started wondering about Christianity. Now, my wife had become a Christian a year before me, and 11 o'clock every night she would start talking about the gospel. At 12 o'clock at night my brain switched off. But we had, for 1 hour a day, a very meaningful relationship. So, almost out of self-defence, I went and I bought myself a Bible. A New English Bible. I remember it had little pretty pictures in it, very tasteful little drawings. I was taken with that. Well, it took me 1 year to read it. I read 3 pages a day, roughly, and double that on the Sundays. And in the meantime, I went to the local Church of Scotland. There was no choice in that matter because we lived in a village community and there were no buses on a Sunday and I didn't have a car. So it was the local church or nothing. But during that time, it was as if the preacher in the pulpit knew everything that was going on in my life. And not just in my life, in my head as well. And the number of times I felt that I was getting spoken to personally by this guy that didn't know me. Quite amazing. At night I would come home from work, from the guitar store that I worked in, and I would read my Bible at that point. I know you're supposed to do it first thing in the morning, but that never worked for me. After my evening meal, I would settle down and I would have a wee read of the scriptures. And again, it was just like a commentary on my day, whatever sort of day I'd had, whether it had been a good day or a bad day. It was there in the scriptures. There was something that rang true. Well, about 9 months into the process, just as I was finishing the Old Testament and coming into the New Testament, it all clicked for me. It suddenly made sense. It was a eureka moment. It was like one of these visual puzzles, you look at for long enough and you think it's a table leg or something. You're looking at a silhouette of a table leg. Have you seen that one? And then you realise, if you look at it another way, it's 2 faces looking at each other. It was like that. Having seen the truth of the gospel, there was no way I could go back and unsee it. So, after a year, I gave my life to Christ. Now that's where you basically say a wee prayer along the lines of, Lord, I've been a right idiot all my life. Going to help me out and take control. That's the Scottish version, you understand. Basically, I have been a sinner. Lord, will you forgive me? And please come into my heart and be my master. It takes a humbling of yourself to do that, because you are acknowledging that you're not the strongest person on the planet. Atheists sometimes criticise us and say that religion is just a crutch. Well, in a sense they're right. But wounded folk need a crutch. And when you get converted, there's a realisation that you've been going through your entire life wounded and you need some help. In practice, though, it's not so much a crutch. It's more a Land Rover, you know. It gets you there through anything. So there I was, and this was some 30 years ago now, I'd become a Christian. Well, I was singing in pubs in those days, earning my living from my guitar in the evening doing that, and as I mentioned earlier, working in a guitar store during the day. Now, the Lord seemed to bless that for a couple of years, but then I got into a cycle of playing worse and worse places, but getting more and more money for it. It was danger money, basically. I was at the barroom brawl end of the market. And there was one night, one Saturday night, after I'd packed up my gear and was sitting in my wee car. I had a car by this time. Yes, a Hillman Imp. And I just prayed, Lord, if you don't want me to do this again, just shut the doors in my face. Well, I turned up the next week at that particular pub to find that the doors were shut in my face. They were locked. The lights were out. And when I inquired down the road, they told me that that pub had lost its licence during the course of the week. Well, that's a fairly blunt answer to prayer, isn't it? You don't really have to sit there and ponder, how should I interpret this? It's a bit like a slap in the face. Anyway, that was the end of my pub singing career. So was I financially worse off? No, not at all. Because my guitar repair business absolutely took off. And any money that I would have made in the pubs, well, now I made it from fixing guitars. The Lord is no one's debtor, and he is to be trusted in all things. So is it just imagination? Well, let's stick with the financial side of things. Some years later, at a time where we weren't in debt, but we had 3 small children and there wasn't much money going about. I mean, it would be the days when you went into the bank and asked, how much can I withdraw and keep my account open? And you were pulling out, they'd say, oh, look, you've got £8. Oh, I love that, thank you very much. And I can keep my account open. Oh, yes. Yes, those sort of circumstances. Not in debt, but scraping along the bottom. Anyway, a Tuesday night, about 11 o'clock, the letterbox went to see, and there's an envelope to Isabel and John, and inside the envelope, £200. So I held it out, a big fan of money in front of me, and I thought about guitars, but only for a moment. And then I asked, Lord, this is great, bless whoever has given us this, but what's it for? Well, over the next week we discovered what it was for. Because the fridge broke down, the washing machine broke down, the microwave went on fire, and the smoke alarm didn't go off. That is bizarre. The next Tuesday night there was another £200. So everything was fixed or repaired. It was the days when you could buy a washing machine, quite good, a good one for £200. Everything was fixed or repaired or replaced. The great kitchen disaster, I call it. Now what it proved was that the Lord was way ahead of the game. This was no getting down on your knees and praying for a miracle. No, the miracle came first. And then the prayer came, and the prayer was obviously one of thanks. Well, my life since that time has been a series of these incidents. On the spiritual side, I've had the New Testament package. There have been the dreams and the visions. And when you get a dream from the Lord, it's not like a normal dream. Normal dream, you're hard pushed to remember it by breakfast time. A dream from the Lord, 20 years later, 30 years later, it's still as clear as the time you had it. And you always know what it means. The visions, yep, that's predicted in Scripture as well to all believers. Well, it's not like every day. It's not like, oh, there's nothing good on the TV tonight. Let's have a vision. No, it doesn't work like that. Every so often, years can go by without one, but every so often, at the crossroads in life, there's a vision. Here's an example. My health was very poor. I had come down with a condition called ME, or chronic fatigue syndrome. I basically spent a year in my bed. And I was unemployed at the time. I'm an honest soul, so I actually told the Social Security that I wasn't fit for work. So immediately what they did was they gave me a medical. They decided that as I wasn't actually in an iron lung, I was fit for work. At that point in time, I couldn't walk 100 yards, but they decided I was fit for work, and they cut my benefit by 10%. Thanks, chaps, that helped. Anyway, one night when my wife and kids were away on holiday, they'd got a free holiday from a friend that they knew in Oban, but I was on my own. Suddenly, I was aware that the light had come on in the hall, and then the light came on in my bedroom, and in came, now wait for this, a monk. No, not an angel, a monk. And not just an ordinary monk, a Celtic monk. Now the Celtic monk dresses differently. First of all, the first thing you notice is that the hairstyle is different. Not the little round baldy bit that the good Lord has given me free of charge. But the hair is shaved right back to the crest of the skull, and then it's long hair down the back over the shoulders. That's it. Other difference is the monk's habit is cut short. It's just below the knee. That's because in Celtic times in Scotland was a muddy place, and a long monk's habit would just get manky. Good Scottish word. So it was a short monk's habit that they had. Well, young man in his 20s, I would have said, comes round to the edge of the bed, and I lever myself up on one elbow, and he hands me a key, a Gale key, like a head like a clover. And I asked him, well, what's this for? And he didn't say anything, he just smiled, and I kind of got the impression I would know. It would come to me what it meant. Well, he left the room, and at the bottom of the bed, in those days, there was a sideboard which was normally coloured in coffee cups and half-written songs and what have you. But it had been cleared, and there was a purple cloth, and on it about 12 to 15 pairs of spectacles. So I got out of bed and went across, lifted a pair of spectacles, and that was it. The next thing, it was morning, and I was awake, fully awake. Now, the quality of what I saw there, it wasn't a dream, but it wasn't reality. You'd guessed that already, hadn't you? Yes, you'd guessed that it was reality. It wasn't a dream, it wasn't reality. It was a kind of third type of experience, really. You could liken it to reality, a play on stage, and a movie in the same theatre are different, and your television experience at home is different again. The three different things. Well, this was It's a clumsy way to put it, but you get the idea. It was different. Well, what I did then was I started applying for a job. By this time I had to get a job. I'd been told that they were going to stop my benefit altogether. And I started applying for work with anything to do with vision of any sort. And within a short number of weeks, I got a job working for the Royal National Institute for the Blind as a driver in one of their minibuses. So it all came through. Interestingly enough, when I got the job application form for the Royal National Institute for the Blind position driver, at the bottom of the form it said, also available in Braille. I think that's taking equality just a wee bit too far. Anyway, what's happened in my Christian life since then? I've grown in Christ. Hopefully I've matured. I've lost the ability to worry. I've lost the ability to feel afraid. Pretty good, actually. Death no longer troubles me. Okay, the manner of drive. The day I turn round and see the number 36 bus about to flatten me, well, yes, I will be afraid. But no, in my logical moments, the prospect of dying no longer troubles me at all. There's a great security. Now, it's not just, as I've mentioned, financial security. The number of times in the past where I've been short of money and had to sell off my keyboard, for instance, just to pay the rent. And the buyer has invariably turned out to be a Christian. Interesting. Yeah, God takes care of the money. Well, if he takes care of the money, he'll take care of everything else. Now, life hasn't been easy, as you may have gathered. With ill health, there have been redundancies, there's been general lack of funds. But the Lord never promised you an easy life. What he did promise you was armour for the battlefield. And that's what you get. Why Christianity as opposed to other religions? Well, very simple, actually. Every religion that's ever been invented has worked on the basis that you are good, you do good things, and God will be pleased with you. But when you stop to think about it, that's really putting man in control over God, isn't it? If I do enough, God will be pleased. Actually, that means I am in control. Christianity is not like that. It's the other way around. God does something for you. He sends his son to die on a cross. That pays for your sins, past, present, sins yet to come. All you've got to do is say thank you. And then you try and do the good things. Only by grace shall we enter. Think about it. I recommend the crucified man. He's the one to follow. A long, long time ago, in a galaxy rather close, in fact, this galaxy, there was a young lad. Now his name was totally unpronounceable. Guessing his parents were Mr. and Mrs. Unpronounceable. You guessed it. The name had X's and H's and T's and not enough vowels and too many R's to be really much use in today's culture. But his trade was sandal maker. He made sandals. So, for the sake of brevity, we will call him Sandy. And Sandy was the first one to receive the creation story. Yes, that one that's in page 1 of the Bible. The bit that atheists read over and over and over again and never bothered to read the rest of the book. Yes, that one. Well, this is the story of the creation story, how it all came about. When Sandy was 12 years old, it was coming up to his birthday. The next day he would be 13. And that night he had a dream. Now, it wasn't a remarkable dream. There wasn't much happening in it. But he remembered it for the rest of his life. It was like it just happened a moment ago. With dreams, well, you get a dream, and by the time you've made your cup of coffee, well, you're quite hard pressed to remember what it was all about. But if you get a dream from the Lord, oh well, no, that's there not just for years, not just for decades, that's there forever in your mind. Well, Sandy went to sleep, and he had this dream, and in the dream he was sitting in a rowing boat, and he was on the water, and he had an impression that there was a lot of water. This could be an ocean, but he couldn't really see it because there was thick fog all around. The mist that you could think you could actually reach out and grab it. It was so thick. He could see just a wee bit beyond the bow of the boat, and that was all. He became aware of light over to his left, and the light seemed to move above him till it was directly overhead, and then again it disappeared to his right, and the sky, or the fog I should say, glowed a beautiful pink colour, and then it was darkness, pitch black. He could literally not see his hand in front of his face. And that was it. The next thing he knew, there was a wailing voice, a somewhat angry voice, and he realised, oh, yeah, that's my mother telling me to get out of my bed. A year later, on the eve of his birthday, he had another dream. Now this time he was back in the boat. Something was slightly different. The fog had disappeared, and he could actually see now that he was on a vast and endless ocean, no land in sight. And above him, clouds, nothing but clouds, a grey sky from horizon to horizon. Pretty boring, really. Well, the light grew from his left, overhead, and like before, it disappeared to his right in a lovely glow. And then the darkness, just like before, the darkness came. And then a different voice was heard. Lower in tone, gruff, but not too unfriendly. And of course that was his father, telling him to get out his bed and come to work. There are sandals to be made. One year later, you've guessed it, on the eve of his birthday, he was asleep, and he had the third dream. And the third dream, he was sitting in his boat. It's still overcast. Suddenly things start shaking, and the waters start moving, and oh, there's a rock. There's another one. Wait a minute, it's not just a rock, it's an island. Oh no, it's not an island, they're mountains. And the land was rising up and throwing the sea off itself. And by the time it was finished, he was sitting still in his boat, and he was in a little pond. All around him, dry land, and way over in the distance, he could see the ocean and the shoreline. And the light came up from his left, moved overhead, and disappeared to his right in a rosy glow. He awoke to somewhat different sounds. And, well, yes, life goes on, and he's a bit older now. This was actually his new wife. And let's just say that the land wasn't the only thing that was rising that morning. Okay, we all got here that way. Now, a year later, yes, the fourth dream. He's on his boat. He's in the pond. The land, it's all green. It's covered in vegetation. There's grass and there's ferns and there's flowers, there's trees, there's bushes. It's lovely. And something happens. The wind arises. A really, really, really strong wind rips the clouds apart. And suddenly he can see blue sky. And in the blue sky, he can actually see the source of this light that's been coming up from his left, going overhead and disappearing in a rosy glow to his right. Yeah, it's the sun, isn't it? And this time when the darkness falls, it's not completely dark because another light comes up. Yes, it's the moon. And loads of stars, more stars than you could possibly imagine. And he wakens to the soft, gentle sound of a baby crying its eyes out. Well, that's what happens when you have sex, isn't it? On day 5, he, of course, went to sleep just before his birthday. Had a dream, and this is the 5th dream. Now this time, when he finds himself in his boat, he looks down into the waters of the pond and, oh, fish. Yeah, it's a trout. Oh, there's a salmon coming upriver. A couple of minnows. And he can hear, before he sees them, he can hear them, bird song. Here's the skylark. And the heavy metal merchant of the bird world, that's the crow. Night comes, and of course there are different sounds at night. There's the owl, the too-wit, too. And he awakens, this time not gently, this time he awakens to find a toddler sitting on his chest. Yes, he's a family man now. A couple of years pass, nothing seems to happen. He was expecting another dream, but no, it didn't happen. But eventually, yes, on the night before his birthday, he had another dream. And this time, from his little boat, he can look and he can see all the beasts. He can see giraffes and he can see antelopes and he can see a squirrel. And then he sees people over in the distance and they wave. Then once more, he's awake. This time, several children and a dog. Good morning, everyone. For a long while, that was it. That was the only dreams he had. He had the 6 of them. And as he grew older, as with most of us, he got to know God better and better. He found that God was trustworthy. basically on his side, rooting for him. Then there was a dream, the 7th dream, and the last one that officially we know about. And in this dream, he saw himself in the boat, and over, sitting on a rock beside the pond, was God. And God didn't seem to be doing much. He seemed to be kind of taking it easy, just resting, chilling out, enjoying the view. And this time when he awoke, it was the noise of his grandchildren arriving. Thumpity, thumpity, thump went their feet, and sleep was to be no more. Now, although it's not mentioned in the Bible, there was, of course, an 8th and final dream. Or was it a dream? Or was it a vision? Because by this time, Sandy, who was an old man, Sandy had died. And Sandy was walking along the shore of a river in heaven. In fact, it was a river that went into the little pond where he could actually still see his boat. And sure enough, there was God, still sitting on that rock. So Sandy went over, and without a word, just sat down beside his Creator. And there they still sit, admiring the view. Now, of course, that story is fiction. If you find the creation story a stumbling block to understanding God, if literally you never get past it and read the rest of the Bible, well, think of it this way. It just gives you the information you need. And all these things, when God made them, it was good. There was no pain, there was no suffering. It's a perfect world that we're being shown. Now, whether that's literally true or figuratively true doesn't much matter. Think of it this way. At my feet I have one of these. No, it's not a jug of coffee. It is a fire extinguisher. And on the back of it, it gives me the instructions. It basically says, press 1, press 2, and that will solve the problem of a fire. It does not tell me who invented fire. It does not tell me about the chemistry of fire. It does not tell me what might cause fires. It just gives me the information I need at the moment. And the creation story is like that. It just gives you the information. God made everything, and everything was good. May Jesus be with you.